Alright, welcome back to the channel. Warhammer Man back in the studio. We're going to take a look at some of the new contrast paints, a little bit of a close-up, kind of check out this article. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe for Warhammer 40,000, Kill Team Necromunda, Age of Sigmar, Warcry, and some Horus Heresy content as well. Daily videos, reactions, reviews, news, painting, modeling, conversion, tutorials, pretty much anything to do with games, workshop, tabletop gaming. So 10 dazzling new contrast paints and how to use them. So we know there are a bunch of new contrast paints coming, 25 new contrast paints, and then also some reformulated shades as well. I believe there were 7 of those. Very exciting. Definitely going to fill a couple of gaps right here. I made a video about this already and just talked about them initially, essentially saying how, you know, the entire range of contrast paints, I've had them for years, and there's quite a few that I barely use and would not necessarily recommend for people to get. So I'm going to be doing a video on my top 10 contrast paints that everybody should have, and then go ahead and put that out, show off how they're used, how I use them in particular, and then you know, ways that you can kind of accent them as well with either like washes, edge highlights, some other like basic techniques, as well as how to use the contrast paints for like glazing and a lot of other like cool techniques to get the most out of your contrast paints. So that being said, let's take a look at the article. Oh, and also I do appreciate the overwhelming amount of people that responded to that previous video and requested that I do my favorite contrast paint video and which ones you should buy. So definitely appreciate all the feedback. It's an incredibly exciting time to be a Warhammer hobbyist. Citadel color range is expanding with 25 vivid and versatile new contrast paints. The shade range has been reformulated with a further 7 new colors added, and a brand new bright white spray primer is coming. It's chromatic Christmas and it's still summer. Alright, so looking at these, just real quick before we get on, I feel like a lot of these fill some gaps in the current contrast range, which is definitely nice to see. We see like the original range has like a lot of, you know, browns and kind of like fleshy tones, and not, I mean, it still has all the colors, but not as many kind of like, I would call them sort of like watercolory or like kind of brighter colors. It doesn't really have a lot of those. I mean, it does, but not proportionately to like the amount of like browns and stuff like that. So that being said, I think there's definitely a couple winners in here, but overall, just like I said, for the initial contrast paint range, I don't think most people need to buy 34 contrast paints. I think there's at least, you know, 10 that you could trim out of there. But in all reality, if I could do it all over again, if I wasn't going to try them out, and I was just like, if I already knew all about it and I had to go out and just buy new paints, didn't have what I already have, I would probably be picking up only about like 10 to 15 of them. So that's what the video will be about. And then as far as the shades also, there was a couple people that commented about that as well, and essentially said they didn't like the kind of like milky look to the shades. They're not changing all the existing shades. They're getting rid of the gloss shades, and then they are like basically reformulating like these new shades. Like they're not going to change Null and Oil and Agrex Earthshade and Reikland Flex. They're not going to change those. They already work phenomenally well. They sell phenomenally well. So they're not going to come in here and mess up what already works. So I know there's a lot of people saying, what are we supposed to do? How are we going to like undilute the shade? No, you don't do that. You use the current shades that you have, and then these are potentially a supplement, you know, essentially somewhere in between what a contrast paint and a shade is. But really, to me, they basically just look like washed out shades, which, you know, that's definitely a style, and there's definitely some uses for some of these. But that being said, also have the new spray as well. And I'm going to tell you right now, I 100% do not use GW sprays anymore. I used them for years, and one day just woke up and realized I was being completely ripped off. The color match is like really nice on certain things, to have like the base already like sprayed one color, but the truth is there's so many other paint brands out there that have like just as good or better paints for way cheaper that also almost like match like exactly. And the truth is, even if they don't match perfectly, there's tons of cool little like techniques you can use. Like if you just spray something red and it's not quite the exact red you're looking for, once you hit it with a wash and a dry brush, you know, it's going to look like whatever color you dry brush on there, and then it's just gonna have the varying tones. So you really don't need the whole model to be the exact correct color if you're painting ultramarines and you can't find the perfect ultramarine blue, as long as some of the like final layers that you use on the model, whether it's dry brushing or edge highlights, etc., they'll bring it up to the right color as long as you're using like that ultramarine blue for the final part. So So anyway, let's take a look at what the article has to say. Take a look at some closer, kind of closer look at the paints. Launched in 2019, the contrast range revolutionized miniature painting. I have to agree, they are phenomenal paints. Now the new colors span the entire spectrum, from eye-searing emeralds and yellows to fiery reds and bold blues. We're really spoiled for choice. Okay, I think that's a British thing, because I think it would normally say spoiled in the United States. So definitely a translation thing. To give us a hand exploring the new range, we asked Warhammer TV painting presenter Emma Robinson to provide us with some ideas for using some of the new colors. So I guess we'll see what Emma has to say as well. I've been painting for many years, and contrast is one of the most fun and versatile paint ranges I've worked with. They are easy and fun to use, making armies faster than ever to paint. I do agree, they are phenomenal, and they are very, very versatile. I love using them as base colors for large armies and glazing over layers on highly detailed miniatures for extra color saturation. The expansion of the contrast range with new colors gives hobbyists an amazing opportunity to try different things. Again, I have to agree. I think the only drawback, the only argument that people have about contrast paints, the only two things I ever hear people say is on like large flat surfaces, sometimes they like pull up and don't look great, and that is easily remedied. In my opinion, what I found is when you have certain colors that pull up really bad like that, you just need to put on thinner coats of them and then just do a second coat. Or arguably, instead of just doing 2 coats of it, you can literally just take that same color. You can use a little bit of contrast medium and then just use a single coat. It will be slightly lighter and more into the cracks, and it's not going to leave as much of like that pooling. And then also there's techniques you can use to decrease that as well. So I had trouble painting things like, rhinos and stuff like that, like large flat panels initially. And then I realized that the truth is either using some medium, using 2 coats and some edge highlights makes them look phenomenally well. If you've never checked out some of the commissions I have done using like the white for contrast painted Sisters Battle tanks, etc., highly recommend you check those out, because a lot of people are missing out on some serious awesomeness. So that is definitely a big factor. And then the second factor, the one that you hear more often than ever, is they're just too expensive. And in my opinion, if I have to choose, when it comes to paints, if I have to choose between having 2 paints at $4 each, let's say, versus 1 awesome paint at $8, I would rather just have less paints, but have the good paints. And, arguably, contrast paints are the best paints. So, there's definitely some other brands out there. There's some other styles. There's some competitors. There's some different type of paints from, other big name brands as well that perform amazingly well. But for contrast paints, for what they do, for what they are, I personally have not found anything that's even remotely close. Now, it doesn't mean it's not out there, but they're great. And also, obviously, because I'm a commissioned painter and I paint almost exclusively Games Workshop miniatures, I need the paint match like colors to be exact. So that's very important to me as well. So, all right, so let's keep on ripping down here. From new recruits to hobby veterans, contrast paints are a fantastic tool to any stage of your army hobby journey. The new range is just awesome. Here are some tips and tricks for using just 10 of my favorites. So, to tell you the truth, as far as new recruits go, I wouldn't recommend contrast paints to like somebody who's just getting started painting. They're not going to have great brush control. They're not going to be able to do a great job with contrast paints right out of the gate. You definitely need to put in some hours, and I think you want to put it in with regular style paints. Get used to that before you start using contrast paints. Now, that's just my opinion. Maybe if you just learn them right off the bat, you'll be killer in a year or something like that. But if you just start with contrast paints, you're gonna run into some trouble, in my opinion. So this one specifically, the Pilar Glacier, I spoke about this one in the initial video. I know initially people are like, what the heck, why would I want this? This is one of the paints basically that I make all the time. I actually have like a pot of this that I have made up myself, my own personal recipe that essentially looks just like this, and it's phenomenal. I use it for a lot of stuff. It is very cool. So again, I like that they're filling a gap on some of this stuff. Does it mean you can't just mix your own paints? No, of course not. But, it's an option for people that don't want to or just want to make sure that they have that consistent color. So contrast blues are some of the most saturated paints in the range. The Pilar Glacier exists to slot in between Aethermatic Blue and Talisar Blue. And if you haven't used those 2 blues before, Talisar Blue is my absolute favorite blue. That one is definitely on my list. And Aethermatic Blue is really cool as well for a lot of like cool spell effects and stuff like that. This one again looks really good and right up my alley personally. Emma says, this is a really light but very pigmented paint that gives models a pop of color and works well with frozen effects. Try it on spears or rocks for icy tones, or over white for a light shading for cloaks. And then next we have the Bad Moon Yellow. Iandin Yellow and Nazdreg Yellow were a dream for painters when they first dropped. Easy to achieve yellows in one coat. Bad Moon Yellow provides an even brighter choice, especially over a white scar undercoat. Emma says, it's so yellow. Bad Moon Yellow covers really well all over for a clean, sharp yellow that's super bright. It's great on armor panels for Bad Moons, of course, and Iron Jaws. Okay, so as far as this contrast yellow is concerned, I can't really tell from this picture here because of the tone and everything. You know, here on like the Kroxigor down here, the Kroxigor scales, we can see a differentiation between like down in the cracks and like the shadowing of the contrast paint. Here, I can't see anything. It just all looks yellow to me. So I can't really judge this from the pictures. I can tell you though, Iandin Yellow, while it has a little bit more of like an orange to it, Iandin Yellow is my favorite yellow from the contrast range or just in general. Yellow has always been a terrible paint, like in general, or terrible color to paint. Always been difficult. There's very few good yellows out there that will coat in a single coat, not streak, and also not like go on so thick that they're nasty in a single coat. So with the Iandin Yellow, if you put that over white or other light colors, it performs phenomenally well. It does an amazing job. And again, that's one of my favorite paints from the range. So definitely can say that's killer. Doesn't look anything like this when it's finished. It has much more of like an orange tone to it down in the cracks. But when we see this, when we get to use it in real life, we'll have a much better idea as far as this goes. As far as Nazdreg Yellow, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's okay. It's got a little more like of a brown yellow kind of look to it. Works well and everything. But it's just not what I'm usually looking for. It's more... It's not as bright and exciting, to tell you the truth. So if I'm doing like hazard stripes, or if I'm doing like some small yellow parts on something and I want a really nice single go, you know, I'm using that Iandin Yellow and it's doing a phenomenal job. So next we have the Kroxigor scales. So teal and turquoise are crucial when painting lizards, magic effects, and space marines like the Alpha Legion. And Kroxigor scales fits alongside Leviathan blue and Achillean green to give you even more choice. This one does look pretty good. To tell you the truth, I don't really use Leviathan blue all that often, nor do I use the Achillean green that often. I do like how this one looks, but I'm not sure that it's necessarily like a necessity for me. I don't think there's ever been a situation where I was like, oh man, I just wish I had one more color right around like that kind of turquoise look, or in between teal and turquoise. So just my opinion. Emma says it's such a rich, brilliant teal color. It's perfect for Seraphon and many other models. I have even thinned it down to make spooky verdigris for the Grand Alliance death models. It does look really good in this picture, so just going by that, looks nice. Next we have the Luxion Purple. Looks like it coats really well. Nice purple saturated color. And, you know, honestly, the ones that are like this, like that yellow, and then also this purple, sort of remind me a little bit more of what the speed paints do. You don't get the same kind of like contrast, I guess you would say. It's not as dark down in the cracks, and it's not as light on the highlights. It's much more of like a uniform color, and that's how this kind of looks to me. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's not really like, you know, what the beauty of contrast is. Magus Purple and Shyish Purple were lighter contrast paints, perfect for tinting and glazing. Out of the pot, Luxion Purple provides a rich and luxurious layer. Not sure how I feel about this. Again, don't really use Magos Purple all that often, or Shyish Purple. Have them, use them a few times. Not particularly amazing. One thing I don't like is when some of the darker colors dry down in the cracks. They get like a really, really dark kind of drying, and they end up with sort of like a glossy look to them, but not the whole thing, just sort of where like the pigment has built up. This doesn't look like it has that effect, but I think the real appeal of this one, and you know what looks different than the other purples to me on this Luxion Purple, is it has a clear like gloss effect to it, or like a satin effect, you could say. As where most of the other contrast paints dry with like a flat look. So that is what I noticed the difference is. Not necessarily the darkness like GW is saying in this article, but much more, you know, the contrast, I guess you would say, between the dark and the light, and then also the sheen to it. It definitely has a sheen. Emma says, regally vibrant. Luxion purple keeps a bright tone even in the dark areas of your miniatures. Great for Hedonites of Slaanesh and the Emperor's Children. It's my favorite purple contrast of all time. I believe that, and it doesn't surprise me because the purples are not particularly amazing. So, yeah, this probably is the best one. We'll see. But again, the contrast effect, not that great on this. Eldari Emerald is next. Eldari Emerald is a color unlike any in the current contrast range, giving you a brand new choice for a whole range of effects. Emma says, this paint has a lovely jade-like tone, which is really intense and vivid. I love using it over Stormhost Silver on gemstones or thin down for a different take on crystal blades than a usual blue. I have to agree on that. It does look good. There's definitely some potential on this one overall. I'll have to see. I'll have to use this one and kind of compare it to some of the other ones. To tell you the truth, with the current range, there are a ton of blues and a ton of greens as well. And I pretty much stick to like the same 2 of each, maybe 3 greens. And I'm really happy with those. So I'm not sure that this one necessarily fits into a gap for me. We'll have to see. I have to see how it kind of like stacks up. This to me is not really like an emerald green, which is, you know, we pretty much already have that. So I don't know. I have to kind of see this one and use it to tell you honestly. So next we have Doomfire Magenta. A new alternative to Voluptuous Pink, Doomfire Magenta is lighter and brighter, opening up new avenues for painting pinkish tones. So this doesn't look pink to me at all. This looks red. The Voluptuous Pink actually is like not bad. It's good for like mouths or tongues or stuff like that. Like, you know, some random like fleshy bits. I don't know. This looks a lot more like a red to me. And again, it sort of has like that speed paint look to it. It doesn't really have the contrast look. And again, this one definitely has more of like a gloss sheen, not like the kind of flat that the typical contrast paints have. So if there's one thing I'm noticing in this line, it's that some of these don't appear to work the same as the contrast paints. It's much more of like a consistent color. And then also they tend to have a little bit more of like a sheen to them. Emma says, this color is all about punch. It's so bright and powerful. Doomfire Magenta straight out of the pot gives you a vivid pink for cloth or magic spells. It also suits Daughters of Cain or Escher gangs if you have some cool pink hair colors. So again, does not look pink to me at all. It looks red. I have to see it, you know, or arguably you could say it looks magenta. I don't know. It looks red to me. We'll have to see in real life. I would assume they go out of their way to make sure the colors show up nicely on the pictures, but I don't know. Gutrippaz Flesh is next. There's a lot of green in Warhammer, from salamanders and Nurgle demons to orcs and orruks. Gutrippaz Flesh is here to help, slotting in between Militarum green and Plague Bear Flesh. You know, I don't really agree with that at all. I don't like how this looks. I mean, it looks okay, but I wouldn't like paint orcs like this. So the color might be alright, but it definitely doesn't. I wouldn't use this on my orcs because that's not the color that you want, even remotely. There's quite a few other really nice combinations for greens. I have found some awesome success, specifically with a couple of combos that I do. And again, those will be in the video when we talk about them. But this doesn't look anything close to Plague Bear Flesh. You know, Militarum green has a little more gray to it. Plague Bear Flesh has a little more yellow to it. And this just looks like desaturated to me. So this looks more like if you did like a sort of like a wash or a glaze with like a sort of like watered down paint rather than, you know, what you're really looking for. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm sure there's something out there that this would be useful for. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but this one, not really that great. I mean, it is like the same as that orruk flesh or whatever paint that came out, like the appearance. But again, the way it coats and everything doesn't look particularly great. So I would rather use the actual regular paint and then put a wash over top of it, or use one of like our existing combos. This just doesn't look particularly good to me. I'm sure that you can do something with this that makes it look good. Maybe if you use this over top of a different color, but this one is not appealing at all. It actually looks like the washes from the set. Emma says gutrippaz flesh is terrific and will save a lot of time when painting kruleboyz and Gretchen. Gives an excellent base color and shade that suits these boys down to the ground. It's really great for camo cloth too. I don't know about that one, Emma. So next we have the magnetize flame. So much like yellow, orange was once considered a tough nut to crack for painters. Griff found orange made it easier than ever, and now magnetize flame presents an even brighter alternative. So this one is definitely bright. It definitely has that kind of sheen to it, that kind of gloss look. It looks like it coats really well. Can't really tell the actual contrast effect on this. Just have to experience this one, honestly. Emma, this is the most orangey orange ever. Just like Doomfire Magenta, it's super pigmented and bright, making everything shockingly orange. It's brilliant for flames and hair colors, and it looks great on cracked terrain pieces over a light base coat, giving you a fantastic hot lava effect. Okay, maybe. I don't know. I honestly think like that Iandin yellow would give you a much better like lava effect, because it basically would leave part of it sort of like white with a little bit of like a yellow tint, and then it's like orange as it gets further away. I don't know. We'll have to see. Again, this just looks like a glossy like orange. This doesn't look super contrasty to me, but we'll have to see. Next we have Bale Red. Blood Angels Red and Flesh Terrors Red gave painters new ways to paint reds, and Bale Red opens up new possibilities thanks to the more saturated color. Emma says Bale Red is pure, bright red. It's versatile and easy to blend with other contrast paints like magnetize flame. I have used it for gemstones, armor plates on orcs, and plasma effects on chaos marine weapons. Again, this just looks like a gloss red. It looks like it coats nicely. It definitely looks glossy. Not seeing like strong contrast effects. It looks more like shadows. Maybe that's just the contrast in full effect, like where kind of like the neck is and the elbows. Again, tough to tell from this picture. Does not look particularly great. I do like the red in the contrast range, and again, it's like the same thing. I barely ever use Flesh Terror Red. Pretty much like Blood Angels Red is my go-to, but there's definitely times where Flesh Terror Red would be useful. Not really sure where this one fits in or if this would be particularly useful. Again, really got to get my hands on some of these, as the pictures just don't do them justice. They should have made the picture like 5 times bigger, like a giant picture, so you could actually see it. If I was trying to like sell paints, I would specifically like show off how good the paints look. I wouldn't just put like a big picture of the pot and then next to it a small picture of the model, or same side picture of the model. I would have a big old picture of the model that specifically shows off like the contrast, shade effects, and highlight effects. That's not really what we're seeing. So next we have Black Legion. Very often when painting Warhammer, you need to paint black. I agree. Over a white base coat. That can be challenging. That is true. Black Templar gave painters one choice. Black Legion introduces a bolder alternative. Emma says this contrast paint is darker than Black Templar, with a rich, clean black tone. It's really good for things like armor or hair, or you can thin it down for a really dark wash over metals. Is this actually darker than Black Templar? I'm not sure that's the case. I think it probably appears darker than Black Templar because, again, it has a gloss effect. Black Templar is flat black when it dries. It's not glossy whatsoever. So I think that the gloss effect that we're seeing here is what makes it appear darker. As anyone that has painted, before obviously knows that, when you have a gloss black, it looks much darker than if you have just a regular flat black. So not saying this won't be good. I think it's definitely great. There's going to be an opportunity where this is really good. If it works at all like Black Templar, but just as like a gloss version, I think it's going to be a phenomenal paint. Black Templar is, again, on my top 10 list. Excellent paint. So I think overall what we're really seeing here is there's a little more of like a gloss kind of look to them and a little more of a kind of like speed paint consistency as opposed to like the actual contrast effect. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Arguably it's just different. It's up to you to decide if it's better or worse or if you want to own them. So Well, there you have it. Pro tips from one of our pro painters. That's just 10 of the 25 new contrast paints. We've already had ideas for color shading, bolts, and energy with Mantis Warrior Green and some filthy Underhive terrain with Garrock's Sewer. The possibilities are truly endless. And then just seeing these paints right here, we're seeing all this like crazy, bright, insane colors. Honestly, at first, it was just like, I don't know about these. Like, what the heck is going on here? But after seeing a couple pictures, a couple breakdowns, there's definitely some winners in this bunch. The real question is, though, and again, going back to that same point, do you need a Bad Moon yellow, a Iron Jaws yellow, and a Imperial Fist? Or are these so close that you don't really need them? Do you need an Eldari Emerald, a Kroxigor Scales, Storm Fiend, the Glacier, Frostheart? Probably not. And Asherman Blue here as well? Probably not. Probably don't need another, 5 blues. I think there's, honestly, out of the contrast paint blues, there's pretty much, 2 good ones, and the other ones are kind of meh. So, if anything, these will just be replacements for the other ones, not, supplements. And same thing with, the kind of, purple and pink colors. Again, most people don't need, 5 different contrast paint, purples or pinks. So, a lot of this is redundant. You could argue the same thing with the greens. It's nice to see a little more variety in these, as we already have, plenty of fleshes, browns, and stuff like that. I think more than anything, where these are really going to fit in is some of these may be just a little bit better performing than something that's really close from the existing range. Or realistically, I have a feeling that the big difference between these is going to be the sort of it's not quite a gloss finish, but it's definitely not matte finish like the existing range. I think it would probably fall kind of somewhere in the middle. But they look nice. I can't wait to try them out. And then I can give you my honest opinion about which ones are winners and which ones are losers. And that's not all. Our shades have been reformulated to make them even better. Now, it does say all of our shades. And we've added 7 more, which we'll be taking a look at next week. Plus, we've also perfected white spray paint, making it easier than ever to undercoat your miniatures. So, they say they have reformulated to make them even better and added 7 more. So that gives us the impression that they actually changed the existing line. I have a feeling what's really going to happen, and this is just pure speculation on my part. I have a feeling what's actually happening is they're eliminating all the gloss shades, what they've openly said, and then by reformulating the shades, what they mean is they're going to reformulate something that we won't even be able to tell the difference between the existing shades. And then on top of that, they're just going to move them from the 18 milliliter pots into the 24 milliliter pots into the 18 milliliter pots. So we saw that with the most recent shade that was released, which was, what was it, the Scorpec one or whatever? It was whatever that most recent Necron one was, which is being discontinued now. So obviously wasn't great. But that was the first time we saw one of the new shades come in an 18 instead of a 24, and I have a feeling that all of the shades are going to the 24. It's basically shrinkflation. Instead of raising the price on the paints, they basically just give you less for your money. We see it all the time in retail packaging, etc. I have a feeling that's what reformulating means. It just means taking the 24 milliliter bottles, pouring them into an 18 milliliter bottle, and then charging you the same price. That's my guess. Could be wrong. We'll see in the future, but I'm usually pretty good about these things. So we'll see. It says you don't have long until you can experiment with these new paints. Let us know what's your painting table. So yeah, definitely cool. Looking forward to getting my hands on these. Again, if I was just a regular Joe, if I wasn't doing commissions or making YouTube content, I would not be picking all these up. I would probably pick out a couple that look good, try them out, and then maybe kind of expand the range a little bit. But in no way, shape, or form do I think the majority of people need to own the current 34 plus contrast paints plus these extra 25. Just don't think it's realistic. In all reality, though, getting my hands on these and actually trying them out, I can give you guys a much more accurate review of each and every one of them. And if that's something you want to hear about the current contrast range as well, there's lots of videos out there showing off where they basically just take a bunch of models and just slap on the contrast paint and then just show it off. That's cool and everything, but since people don't paint like that, it's not really useful. doesn't give you like the full effect. It shows you how they kind of show up, and it's a good little like easy way to show them off, but it doesn't do a lot of them justice. So look out in the near future. I will paint that video. It obviously takes a ton of time and effort to actually like paint stuff instead of just doing like reactions and reviews like that, and I try to spend the majority of my time actually painting commissions. So you know, it's nice to be able to just do these quick videos, get them out, and have people enjoy them over the long ones that take a bunch of effort, require a bunch of editing, but in my opinion offer a lot of times much more sustainability and value over time. So let me know what you think of the new range. Let me know what you're excited about, if any of these are jumping out and you feel like you need some of these in your collection. I always like to hear back from the community. You guys are awesome. I appreciate each and every single one of you, all the comments, reactions, you know, basically like new subscribers, all the just positivity and support in the community. So gonna go ahead and wrap it up there. If you do enjoy daily videos, everything from reactions, reviews, and news, painting, modeling, or conversion tutorials, make sure to like and subscribe. Everything to do with Warhammer 40,000, Kill Team Necromunda, Age of Sigmar, Warcry, and of course some Horus Heresy content as well. I am Warhammer Man, this is Warhammer Man Studios, and I'm out of here.